Hi, I'm Pastor Tay of the Titus 2 Ministry and PastorTay.com. Welcome to Espresso. It's an interactive Bible study that is like espresso, strong and smooth. Enjoy the taste.
Okay, it's top of the hour, and my name is Dr. Don. I'm going to be moderating a conversation or dialogue with George, and we're talking about a most important thing. George is the director of Titus 2 Community, and you probably see him involved a lot in the threads and the dialogues and discussions that we have online on our Facebook. But welcome to Talk Live Tuesday, and we're glad you're here. Tonight's subject is about a most important thing. It's actually a kind of a hot topic. It's about in-laws again, talking about those in-laws. Not outlaws, but in-laws. And what we're going to be discussing is the man in the middle and what that means. And the man in the middle has to do with the conflict that the husband often has with, let's see, here's George. A husband, a Christian husband, or any husband for that matter, often has with, oh dear, we having technical challenges, George? You're sideways, or am I sideways?
We're both sideways.
We're both sideways. Well, hi, Kathleen. There. Hey, cool. Can everybody see?
How are you?
Can everyone see George?
Can you hear me okay?
Yeah, I can hear you. Can you hear me?
I can hear you fine.
Can you hear me now? I keep turning lights out because I look like a snowman again, and the light behind me is not even on. But, it's crazy. We're having a wild storm, and with lightning and monsoons and everything, which is kind of unusual. I mean, we do have this during the summer, but not as badly as what we just had. It's passing over, hopefully. And anyway.
Now, are you exaggerating with the description monsoon, or it's actually a monsoon?
Well, monsoon as in raining buckets, cats and dogs and everything else.
Yeah.
A lot of hail. We had hail to start with. And most often, a monsoon. Most often it's accompanied by a tornado. But we didn't get a tornado watch or a warning. What we got is a flood warning. But
wow.
I'm not worried about it. So,
hi, Catherine.
Okay. Again, welcome everybody. I hope you're on. Let us know if you're watching, and say hello and dialogue. And George and I are going to be discussing the man in the middle, as I began to talk about. And the man in the middle has to do with the husband who seems to be caught in between his family and his wife, or his wife's family and himself. So sometimes there's tension between the mother-in-law and his wife or whatever, but the in-laws problems. And so what we're going to do is dialogue about that and how to overcome this dilemma. Now, we're not going to resolve everything, obviously. Sorry about that. What we're going to discuss is how George found resolution in his particular issue. But before we do that, allow me to explain some biblical principles and ideas. You'll let me do that, right, George?
For sure.
Oh, cool. Good. All right. Let's start with Genesis 2. In Genesis chapter 2, once upon a time, long time ago, Genesis chapter 2, verses 18 through 25, that's where we find how God created the family. And the man receives the bride from God the Father. And then the man is to leave his parents' authority, his provision and protection, their authority, provision and protection, and then cleave to his wife, ultimately so they can weave together. So the visual perspective there is when it says they become one flesh, it means that they're weaving together in a relationship that is that ought not to be torn apart and taken apart. And oftentimes that's very difficult because what happens is the relationship is so close with mom and dad, or the wife's mom and dad, is that the ties haven't been broken in a healthy way. Then we come to a passage like in Exodus 20 and Deuteronomy 5, where it talks about honoring your father and mother. How do you do that? How do you relate as a husband and as a wife, and yet to your parents while honoring them? And that becomes a dialogue. And boy, I could give you a few stories, but I won't this evening, about how people took that too far. And then there's another passage in 1 Timothy chapter 3, verse 4, that says, a man must manage his own family well. So when you have these requirements, these three things placed upon the responsibility and the role of a husband and a man, the question is, how do you do that? How do you do that? So the man in the middle is when the husband is supposed to leave his parents, leave their authority, their provision, and the protection, bind together with the wife, and not allow intrusion or not allow the in-laws and the relationships to cause friction and problems within that relationship. So George, could you describe for us your experience with this regard?
Sure, gladly. Hey everyone, just give me a like if you can hear me okay. My name is George, the director of the Titus 2 community, and I just want to share a bit about what God has done in the life of my wife and I with regards to dealing with in-laws. So ever since the beginning of my marriage, we've struggled in our relationship with having to relate to my side of the family. And at the start, it was all of the expected sort of awkward behaviors that you would find in, I guess, becoming or getting some new in-laws. And, it started out with just carefulness and behavior, a sort of respect that you would have. You couldn't let your guard down when you were over visiting, and you always replied very politely and things like that. But for my wife, she started developing feelings of dread, and there came to a point where she would start to isolate herself when we were with my family. And for myself, I started to feel hurt and frustrated and annoyed with her at her behavior. It came to the point where when we would go and visit my parents, we both feel so much dread. And every time it would put a heavy strain on our relationship. And she tried to talk to me about it, and I didn't think it was such a big deal. I tried to minimize it at first and say, what's the big deal? I mean, we're going to visit for 1 day or 3 days, it's 4 days out of 365 days in a year. And then also I took it very personally. I thought that she didn't like my family. I thought that she didn't want to be with them, that she didn't want to get to know them. And so it hurt me really personally. And it wasn't until I started working with Pastor Tay that I realized that this is a really serious problem in my relationship. And it's something that we needed to deal with. So I felt this definite tension between my family and my wife. On the one hand, I knew that my allegiance was to Eunice and that she was my number one priority in the relationship. But on the other hand, I also wanted to reach out to my parents and build a strong relationship with them. They're non-believers, so there's an aspect of evangelism in there. I wanted to reach out to them to share Christ. And I thought that that would be the goal when we would go and visit them.
So let me stop you there. First of all,
Yeah.
Anybody in the audience have a similar experience? Can you relate with in-laws or outlaws or your parents, your spouse's parents?
I believe so.
Yeah. I'm sure there are, but nobody's willing to fess up. dialogue something
Yeah, for sure.
as important as it is. And so here you are
Definitely.
challenged with that, and you wanted to build a stronger relationship. Do you mean that you wanted to build a stronger relationship, you and your wife with your family, or was it not strong before? Clarify that just for a moment.
Yeah, so I wasn't a good kid when I was living in the home, especially my teen years. I was very rebellious, and come end of university, my relationship with my parents really wasn't that great.
Hmm.
It was only until after I came to Christ, about 5 years ago, I came to believe that Jesus Christ is my Savior, that I really had a desire to reach out to them,
Hmm.
especially with the gospel.
Hmm.
And so there's kind of a guilt aspect in why I try so hard to reach out to
Hmm.
them. Part of that is because I feel guilty that I have been such a bad son, so I kind of want to make up for that now.
Do they see a difference now, do you think? Have they noticed a difference with you?
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah, good.
Oh yeah, a huge difference. It was like night and day.
Yeah, awesome. Well, good.
Yeah,
Um,
for sure.
so, what were the triggers then with your wife? What were the hot buttons, so to speak, that upset her?
Yeah, for sure. Well, the trigger was my behavior when we would get to my parents' house. I would be just very overly intentional and involved in
Hmm.
trying to help out and trying to engage them with in conversation and trying to spend time with them. And because she saw me so intentional and she really wasn't on the same page as I was at the time, she reacted by closing herself off, isolating herself. It got to the point where she would actually go into the bedroom,
Hmm.
and then there'd be actually physical distance now between, my wife and I, and myself and my parents. And I really felt this tension of being the man in the middle in those situations.
Did your
And
parents
that
ever
was
bring that?
probably, as bad.
Did your parents?
No, pardon, what did you ask?
Did your parents ever bring that up with you about why does she feel so distant? Or
No, they haven't. And I think, I need to clarify something is that, I love my parents a lot, and I also love Eunice so much. And there isn't any sort of bad bad blood between the two. Like it's not like my parents have wronged her in any way
right,
or she has wronged them. It
right,
was more of an internal struggle between us and in our
okay,
relationship. My wife gets territorial when someone else kind of compromises our relationship or our allegiance.
yeah, that makes sense. I noticed that Kathleen says that it makes you feel alone in a house full of people, and she can relate.
Yeah,
Yeah,
yeah.
um, so that can be quite a trigger. So then, what happened on your way home, or when you got home, or then what happened?
Yeah, honestly, we didn't deal with it well. We would both just be so relieved that we survived the 3 days. We'd go home, and we wouldn't talk about it.
Hmm.
And then these problems would surface once again when we would have to go and visit, or when they came to visit, and it was just the whole cycle all over again.
Hmm.
And you know, the days and weeks leading up to those visits were just uh, there was an atmosphere of dread just in our relationship and in the household.
So how long did this go on? A year, 2 years, a few years?
It's been going on for a couple of years now. Yep.
Hmm. Hmm. So then what happened? How did you end up handling it, and what do you do now?
Okay, so I think that the biggest issue that I want to communicate with everyone that's watching is that my biggest issue was that I was not being a good manager of my own family. And I was trying too hard to uh, be a good son to my parents.
So let me stop you there, George.
Sure.
When you say a good manager,
Yeah.
some people, it talks about that in Timothy and other places, how the husband
Yeah.
takes the lead and role, but you didn't have, all the physical preparations correct, or what do you mean by manager?
Okay, so let me break it down for you. So the first thing that I didn't realize was that I didn't admit that it was a problem in our relationship. It's only until now where I acknowledge that, hey, we need help in this area. This is an area in our lives, in our relationship, where we really struggle and things needed to change. And so it was me who first initiated this by acknowledging just how my wife felt about the situation, acknowledging her feelings, even though at once used to minimize them. And that almost solves about 80% of the problem, is just acknowledging the fact that your wife feels that way, and those feelings are real.
Yeah.
And those feelings should be taken seriously.
Yeah. Well, that's a good, important, an excellent point, how communication is so vital in a relationship. And that really plays a part in this management thing, how you lead your family, how you lead your wife. So good.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. And so because we had this desire to get help and to seek some sort of resolution to our problem, we reached out to a local biblical counselor because we've been fighting over this for such a long time, and we just needed direction. We just needed someone to come and help us and walk and take our hands and just walk us through the matter. And going through counseling, I think really for me as a manager, it really renewed my desire to want to manage my family well and to take up this mantle of male headship, and to really move my family in a better direction, a direction where we can serve and we can reach out to people together.
And that's a lot different than, male headship sometimes comes across as, taking the role like a dictator. Everything, you're the king, you're the sovereign, you rule everything. It doesn't sound like that's what you mean. Yeah.
No, that's definitely not what I mean by it. I take my example from Christ, who was a servant leader and who was humble and who desired the greatest good for others.
Yeah.
And so I really wanted to, honor this one flesh relationship, like you talked about at the beginning, with my wife, and how it's over and above all other relationships.
Well, that's another good point that you bring up, the one flesh relationship. When you have tension in the family like that extends beyond just the two of you and others, in-laws in this case, have an effect upon the relationship, it tends to unravel that the weaving effect that God desires for us to have, which is not a good thing at all. So So then what'd you do? Oops, excuse me. Keep bumping this.
Okay, so I talked about how I wanted to be a better manager of my family, and I really wanted to really honor this one flesh relationship that I had with my wife. And so through the help of the biblical counselor, we were able to come up with some practical sort of solutions to help us prepare for these visits. So I'm just gonna tell you guys them, and hopefully they're a blessing. Hopefully they're helpful to you. They were really groundbreaking for me. So the Lord has been really using just this wisdom to build us up and to strengthen our relationship. The first thing that we decided to do was start discussing the visit in detail.
Hmm.
And one of the things that my wife felt a lot of dread about was the unknown of showing up and what we're going to do and what the schedule was. And I was bad at communicating, so I always assumed that I would be doing this with my brother or doing this with my mom, and she would just be out of the loop.
Hmm.
And so we decided to, discuss the visit in detail beforehand just to prepare
It's
and
smart.
talk about our expectations, our
Hmm.
schedule, our concerns. And this gave her a lot of peace and security because at least she knew what was coming up. And that helped minimize some of the dread that she felt the days leading up to the visit.
Yeah, wise.
So the key mindset here really, yeah, the key mindset is really just having the same goals, which was something that our counselor friend really pinpointed for us as a problem.
Hmm.
See, my goal when I went to go visit my parents was to reach out to them, was to spend time with them because we live far away and I don't get to see them many times a year. Whereas her goals were very defensive and reactive to my behavior.
Hmm.
And so she was set on protecting time that we had together as a couple, and things that would minimize her discomfort being in my parents' home.
Good.
And so we weren't on the same page. We did not have the same goals going in. And so we always felt terrible in the outcome. And so discussing these things in detail beforehand really helps us align ourselves with the right goals.
Good. Great.
Um, yeah. Another thing that we did was intentionally set aside time during the visit just for us two. My wife really values the quality time that we spend together, and I do as well. It gets a little bit more difficult when you have other people around.
You're right. Sure.
So we really tried to be in, yeah. So we tried to be intentional in setting time throughout the course of the visit, whether that's just going for a walk, just us two, or going on a small excursion, or even just huddling up in our bedroom and just spending time together.
Sure.
It really helped her um, helped her to see that her relationship, the relationship between me and her is the most important, and
Right.
that's the thing that I'm trying to protect as a manager.
That's great.
And then yeah, and then the last thing that I would just share with you guys is that after the visit, we set up a time of debrief.
Hmm.
And this was something we didn't used to do. We would just, ignore it and forget it until next time, but we're really trying to, take our problems head on. And so we have a debrief afterwards to talk about what went well, what didn't go well, what concerns came up, what things did she like or didn't like, um, things that we can improve on or watch out for, and also just wins in terms of reaching out to my parents,
Hmm.
building relationship with them, and stuff like that. So, yeah, like we were thrilled. I think that this past time that we went back, um, it was a huge difference, and a
Good.
lot of it had to do with our renewed mindset, our oneness in terms of our goals, and the fact that I acknowledge that we need to protect this relationship
Hmm.
between husband and wife over
That's
any
great.
other relationship.
So, well,
Yeah,
that's excellent, and that's a wise use of the idea, the biblical idea of Christ as a servant managing the home. Um, do you think that you're also at the same time honoring your mom and dad by doing this? I mean,
um, I think I am. I think I am because now I have my wife. Now I have my partner to help me
right,
in reaching out to them,
right,
and it allows them to see Christ in her, not
yeah,
just in me.
right,
It allows us to see the union between our marriage and
yeah,
our relationship. And it's just, I mean, it just has given us so much more joy that I
yeah.
hope will, leak through, and they'll be able to witness that.
Good. Awesome.
Yeah.
Well, does anybody want to? I see Michael says this. It's critical taking notes. Anyone
Yeah,
have
give us some likes, guys, if you like
yeah,
the
likes
content.
or comments or thoughts or protest? Do you disagree?
Yeah.
Any
Do we have
thoughts?
any questions?
Yeah, any questions? Not even about George's nice shirt. I like that teal blue shirt. It's cool. No comments there either?
Oh, Tay said he gave us a bunch of questions.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Kathleen. Good stuff. Good. Bunch of questions. What bunch of questions do we have? I don't see any.
I don't see any either.
Yeah, Carissa says it helps George's wife to have a better relationship with his parents too. Huh.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Put in that kind of plan and expectations. Expectations are so important, aren't they? Which you address.
For sure.
So, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Anyone else? No? Any thoughts? Comments? A bunch of likes, Tay says. All right.
Yeah. I really like Carissa's comment here about how my wife gets to build a better relationship with my parents, which is,
Good.
I think, very crucial because oftentimes we think that it's us who have to do, the ministry and to reach out to people and do the talking.
Right.
And that God can't work in any other way except through you, by your hand.
Yep. Yeah. Michael brings up a good question. What made you feel the need to be open to the public about your marriage?
Well, it's not fully public. I hope it's in the private group that we have.
Yeah.
But honestly, it's because that this is something that the Lord has really taught me, and I'm really happy, as you can see, because I have learned this new knowledge, this new
Good.
wisdom,
Good.
and it has really blessed my relationship.
Yeah.
My wife has been, just a lot more secure, I would say,
Good.
in her impression of me as the leader.
Sure. Well, it seems like you have you hit a good, I don't like the word balance, but a good perspective and a good way to address what men often find, to be a conflict. How do you please mom or mom and dad while also pleasing the wife? Mm-hmm. And typically in relationships,
right.
As Pastor Tay and I know, having counseled these many years, in marital relationships, this is a key issue. And it's either, the husband gives deference to the one or to the other, but hasn't been able to find a good, healthy way, a win-win situation to the relationship. And it seems like you pegged it, that the counsel was wise and your application, applying it has been good. So what do you think about that?
Are you talking to myself?
Yeah, I'll talk to you, George. Anybody else have any thoughts there about that?
Well, I'm just interested to know, based on your counseling experience, what if the mother-in-law is much more aggressive? Like in my situation, it was more of a internal struggle between my wife and I. The external pressure wasn't really there. It was more so from my own heart, my desire to please both sides. But
yeah,
what about in the case where the mother-in-law is very aggressive?
Yeah. Oh, that's tough. Anybody else want to address that first? No, that's an excellent question, because it certainly can damage the relationship, and I've seen it um, impact the relationship between a husband and wife to the point where one or the other, especially the wife, feels denigrated, put down, cast out, set aside, not included, not loved enough, and not valued or respected. That becomes, as we see, a real struggle between what you're bringing up, the mother-in-law and the daughter, or the wife or the daughter-in-law, and who's in control. There are many ways to address it. One of which is to do the hard thing and sit down, first of all, with your spouse, as you did, and dialogue about those very issues and very concerns, and try to get to the point where you understand where your wife is coming from and what she's thinking, be empathetic, and not only that, but to be able to articulate her perspective on the problem and the issue, and honor that. And maybe you don't feel that as the husband. I mean, you generally don't feel that, but at least the wife understands or now knows that you empathize, or you can voice and put a voice to what she's feeling. So that's a start in having a plan, but it often comes down to you have to have the dialogue with the mother-in-law. You're going to have to talk to her.
Right.
And oftentimes the question is, how do I do that without making mom upset? Well, sometimes she's going to be upset no matter what, because she wants to be in control.
Yeah.
And part of that, moms will always be mothers. I think I shared with somebody, maybe I shared with you the other day, even when I was 40 something, my mom was always concerned about me going outside in the cold and getting a cold. Make sure you take your sweater, dear. Here I am. I'm already a grown man, I have a family and everything, and she's still being mom. And I think that's a mom thing. Yeah, moms do that. But when she's dictating and telling you how you relate with your wife, or complaining to you about your wife, or telling your wife, she's not good enough, or she needs to do this, and she's not doing enough, then she's crossed the line, and the boundary has been broken. So that's where it takes a discussion about how to approach the mom, and to sit down and discuss it, and talk about it biblically. If she's not a believer, that engages a whole different dynamic. If she is a Christian, bring out principles and ideas. But to have that dialogue is going to be crucial, and talk. And then you kind of have to let things go the way they're going to go. If the mom, sometimes the mom just doesn't know she's doing that. Sometimes the mom will be very hurt and take it wrong, misinterpret, be upset, not talk to you for a long time. Sometimes she'll listen and try to make corrections. But every mom is different. Everyone's situation is different. But the key thing is not to allow you as the man or the husband to be caught in the middle and allow that to unravel the relationship.
Right.
Anybody have any thoughts on that? Because it really is a classic struggle between mother-in-law and daughter-in-law. Any comments or thoughts? All right. Well, how are we doing on time? We doing okay?
Yeah, I think it's time to wrap it up.
All right. Okay. Well, this is great. Appreciate our discussion and dialogue.
Yeah, that was awesome. Thanks, Don.
Oh, thanks for being here. And it's good talking to you and talking with you about this important aspect. Next week on Titus 2 Community, Tuesday night, Talk Live. What we're going to do is have a friend of ours, Elise Fitzpatrick. Listen to me. I'm sorry. Eileen Scipione. I thought of Elise because I was looking at some of her books just recently. But Eileen Scipione has been a marriage counselor, a biblical counselor for many, many years, and quite an extensive experience, a line of people that she's not only counseled, but she's done speaking engagements in a variety of venues, and she's helped out Titus 2 ministry many, many times. So she'll be our guest speaker next Tuesday night, 6 o'clock Pacific time and 9 o'clock Eastern time. So I hope you tune in. And she'll be talking about biblical insights on the subject of sex in marriage. That'll be awesome.
Can't wait.
So if you missed tonight's broadcast or you're tuning in a little bit late, we're going to turn off now. However, you can always go to YouTube and go to the Espresso channel and check out the Espresso channel, because all the previous tapings are there. You can look at them. You can look at this anytime. Thanks for thanks for coming. Thanks for being a part, and we'll sign off now. Good to see you. Bye.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks for joining us for a devotional drink today. If you love Espresso, click here to subscribe so you know when the next one is ready to enjoy. Visit our website for resources for every chapter of your life. And if you're thirsty for more, click here. See you next time. May God bless your day.